Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to Care of, which is the sponsor of today's video. Hey everyone, Erin from the Impatient Gardener here, and today I want to talk to you about how to solve little design problems in your garden. So I think that sometimes taking areas, little bite-sized pieces, is a much easier way than trying to figure out an entire garden at once. And a lot of times we have established garden areas that just aren't working for us. And this is a way that I use to just sort of zero in on these areas, just more than anything to get my thoughts together on them, so I'm not like flailing about in a garden center come spring. So one of the areas that I know needs some attention is the area where we built a new path. So if you look at this overhead shot of the garden, I just took this a couple weeks ago. This is where we built the new pathway. And so this garden area around that needs some attention. So here's a ground level photo of this new pathway here. Now, you might remember if you watched the video where we made this, which was, I was actually more of a review of what we did because I didn't film it live. But you might recall that I had said I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with these sort of long treads. And I was thinking about either decomposed granite or perhaps some kind of ground cover. And then I saw this picture of Adam Woodruff's garden. He's a garden designer, and this is his own garden. Fine Gardening magazine has done a lot, apparently a couple features on his garden. And this was actually from a reel that was on the Fine Gardening Instagram channel. And I took one look at it and I thought, have I seen this before? Because this is exactly what I was picturing. So we're definitely going to go with a decomposed granite here. This is filled in with mulch for the time being. We just filled that in for winter so that we could use this path over winter, but that mulch will get dug out as we work on filling this in with the decomposed granite. But if you look at this drawing, you can see I've drawn two gray lines here, which really show what the path is going to look like, because really this is only going to be 2 stones wide, but because I basically used wall stones for this instead of long stones. Adam Woodruff's garden uses big long stones, which would have been great, but I didn't want to have to bring in machinery to do this. So this was a way to make this a DIY project. But we're going to cover up the edges of the longer steps so that it looks only as wide as essentially 2 stones, except for at the top. So there is a bit of a flare here, but the flare is accentuated with the depth and the angle of the photo here. The yellow line that you see here is actually the sun situation here. So right now we're looking north in this photo, and because there are several trees off to the left, which is west, the sun kind of comes at here at an angle. So off to the right, this garden is really pretty sunny, but that line sort of delineates where we're sunny and where we're shady in this garden, or you know, shadier, I should say. So that's what we're working with in terms of sun exposure. And just taking a photo of your own garden and drawing out these little things can be really helpful, just to get your mind in a place of like, if there is a spot where the sun is, you know, if you need to delineate what that is. Now the garden to the right is, I actually redid that kind of on a whim last year, and I'm quite happy with what that is. And it's a total riot of color. It's what I call my hot borders. So we've got reds and yellows and oranges and colors that I don't use in mass quantities elsewhere in the garden. It's quite fun. I'm quite happy with that garden. So we're not really touching that area, but we are going to have to incorporate, you know, that side of the garden in a little bit with what's going to happen on the shadier side of the garden. So before I get into the plant part of this, I just want to take a minute to tell you about Care of. Do you take vitamins? I've taken vitamins my whole life, but I do wonder if I'm taking the right vitamins. And that's where Care of has been great for me. Care of is a subscription service that ships high-quality, personalized vitamins, supplements, and powders to your door every month, so you don't have to stare at the vitamin aisle in the drugstore wondering what you should be buying. Everything is made from clean ingredients that are backed by the latest science and research so that you know what you're taking is the good stuff. And the best part of Care of is that it all starts with a quiz that zeroes in on what vitamins and supplements are best for your needs and goals. I have joint issues, and it's important for me to take care of them as best I can, so I can continue doing all the things that I love for many years to come. I'm also really focused on taking care of my skin. Collagen happens to help with both of those, so for the first time ever, I'm including collagen in my supplements. I also use this collagen powder as a creamer and add it right to my coffee. I love that the vitamins come in these daily packs and this little dispenser, which I keep right on the counter, and I take them in the evening when I'm looking at it. And I really love that the packets are made from plant-based film that I can put right into the compost. And of course, they're great for traveling. If you're curious about what vitamins and supplements Care of would recommend for you, go take their quiz. And when you click on the link below and use my code, you'll get 50% off your first order with Care of. Thanks for sponsoring this video, Care of. Okay, so we have some things to work with here, which is why this is more of a moving things around and adjusting things than a clean slate situation. And when we talk about plants here, what I think is important to note is while I'm going to talk about specific plants, what I'm really talking about is the characteristics of those plants that I'm looking for. And I find this to be really helpful just to have in the back of your head, if not written down on a sheet of paper. Because if you know that you're looking for something that can take part shade and you've got relatively moist soil and you want something that's a fine texture with a lot of movement, that doesn't pigeonhole you as much as it does if you say, I want Hackle and Chloa all gold there. Because that way, if you can't find that plant, because let's be honest, a lot of times you make these designs and then you can't find the plants and then you're stuck. And then everything kind of starts unraveling if you've really got your heart set specifically on a specific plant. So that's why I feel like it's okay to spec specific plants in your garden, but more than that, know what it is about that plant that made you choose that plant so that if you have to find a substitute for it, you know what to look for. So in this case, we actually do have this patch of Hackle and Chloa down here. And that's Hackle and Chloa all gold. And I think I can divide that a bit. But I also might pick up a couple extra because we're going to use that quite a bit in the rest of this to sort of tie this together. Because my main thing is here is I need plants to soften that edge. I do not want to see the edge of these stones. I want this whole path to be very soft and natural feeling. Now there is a few Boom Chocolata geraniums that are sort of planted in there. And you know, those look really nice there. They do well in this spot. And those are kind of just sort of interplanted in the Hackle and Chloa a little bit here. So we're going to think about those, leave those where they are. Perhaps think about incorporating some of those. Perhaps that's something I would bring into this spot over here so we get a little bit of reference on both sides. But basically, my thought on that is we're just repeating some of the plants we already have in this area so that this makes sense. Because keep in mind, we've got a lot of color over on the right, and already there's going to be kind of a big jolt because this area over here, which is mostly shade garden, really tends to be variations on green with a lot of play with texture. So we've already got a kind of big shift from a lot of color to not as much color, and so we do need to tie the two sides of the path in together. We're going to take this Hackle and Chloa all gold and we're going to move that throughout. So for instance, I definitely would like a clump of it to hide this corner right here. And I definitely think a bit down here would help. And maybe even we might be able to push that a little bit so there's another clump here. I don't know that we'd be able to pull it any farther out towards the bottom of the picture here because I think that's going to get a little too sunny there. We know we like that plant. I already have that plant. We know it works well there and I want to work that one in. Now the next plant I need is something along that path that is a different texture, but not something where I'm relying on flowers. So for me, a really good option for that would be something like Heuchera villosa Autumn Bride, which is a native Heuchera for us. So it performs way better than any of my other sort of fancier Heucheras. This is mostly about foliage with this plant. It does get flowers on it, which are great, but this is mostly about a bold textured green foliage that does quite well in this part sun to part shade realm. So a little bit of that dotted across the path here. Maybe down here, just to keep your eye moving back and forth and make it feel like you're not in a disjointed path, I think would be really good. Now we could also bring that, it can definitely handle a little bit more sun, so I could absolutely bring that up here a little bit more on the path. But we need some color, like I said, on the other side. So again, we're looking at a part shade situation here. And I would love, if I can find it, it's a new plant, so you never know. But one thing that would be really great is this Astilbe Dark Side of the Moon. New Astilbe, I believe that Hans Hansen at Walter's Gardens in Michigan actually developed this one. It's a real looker. The foliage on this is outstanding. So, I think, we would work some of that in here, just kind of mixed in amongst that Hacklencloa. I do have that Astilbe Hacklencloa combination going on over in the garden I did a couple of years ago, and it's a real winner for me. And then I would bring some of those over here as well, so that we've got some relevance again going on there. I should add, by the way, that there are existing plants on the left side of this plant, including a very big hosta right in here. In fact, there's several hostas that are kind of scattered throughout there, which are perfect for that area. I have no problem with that at all. Now, the other thing that might be really nice to incorporate in here is Stacky's humalo, which I have growing back here in part of this area over here. There is some Stacky's over there. So not just tying in the path with the two sides, but bringing it into the other side as well, so that you feel anytime your eye can connect where you're going, it draws you forward. Those are really beautiful plants. And I think they'd work well. They probably will not overlap with the blooming on the Astilbe, which would actually be good. Now, one thing I do have in this garden that's growing there is a lot of ostrich ferns. So ostrich ferns, I have them growing here in another part of the garden, but they do spread and they are difficult to get rid of. And this whole area back here is ostrich fern. And ostrich ferns, those they're probably like 4 feet tall in that area. In other places in the yard, they get like 6 to 7 feet tall. But ostrich ferns, they just block the whole view. So it's fine if you want to block a view, but I don't particularly want to block a view because I actually have some really nice things planted on the bank on the other side of this. So I thought maybe we look for something that will grow there, but will get a little bit more ethereal. And a perfect option for that, I think, is Anemone Henri Joubert, which has got little white flowers. It'll bloom later in the season. So in the beginning of the season, you're basically looking at foliage there. But later in the season, you could have a little stand of those back here, those anemones, if they're happy. Sometimes they spread a little bit nicely, not meanly as far as I'm concerned, but some people have issues. So Henri Joubert is that was a perennial plant of the year many years ago. It's a great one. But a little collection of those over there also that might brighten up that spot over there. And then over here, I'd probably throw a couple of those over here as well to, again, try to combine these two sides of the path. I think you get the idea here of this is an exercise in just getting your head together on what you need in your garden, so that you can go with a plant list. But better than a plant list, I mean, great. By all means, pick out some plants for sure. But by all means, also have a reason for why you're choosing those plants, so that if you're at the garden center and you got to throw the whole thing out because you can't find, like if you can't find that Astilbe Dark Side of the Moon, what are you going to do? Are you going to substitute another Astilbe? Maybe you can't find that Hacklencloa and you need to start looking for something else that's going to give you some movement there. I think the why is more important than the specifics of each plant. And then from a budgeting standpoint, you also want to get a rough idea of how many plants you'll need. If you're really trying to properly design this area, you'd want to transfer this over, go out there, take some measurements, get your graph paper out, and then draw this out so you know how many plants you need. So obviously, if I'm doing this on my iPad, but you could also just print a picture out and take some markers and start drawing on it. Or actually what works really well is print a picture out and stick a piece of tracing paper over it and then start drawing on the tracing paper. Anything that works to just get your mind going in the right direction. But I also think there's something really important about analyzing that spot, and by putting it on paper, I think we're sort of forcing our brains to accept the reality, because I don't know about you, but I am perpetually optimistic about the amount of sun that I have in any given area. I will push it all day long, but if I put it on a piece of paper and I know, like, Erin, you cannot plant anything full sun loving beyond that line. That helps keep me in check and helps me, better than that, even narrow down what plants I might be able to get. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Go out there and plant something great in your garden. Bye, everybody.